Ankur Delight.
Good morning, Nate.
Hey, I wanted to pick your brain a bit or discuss something with you. As per your request, I went back to that Alida episode and I spent some time with it, seeing if I could extract something for me to try this quarter.
Music to my ears.
Yeah. And maybe not surprisingly to you, what really stood out to me was her process of quarterly goal setting, which I think has a lot in common with the way we approach our coaching with some of our clients and Momentum Lab.
Yeah.
I think it's probably at this point kind of a best practice for a lot of people in our field to orient to a quarterly framework. So I wasn't surprised to hear someone so effective and successful as Alida doing that. What's a little different, what did stand out to me as something I could try, was something I've heard a lot about, but had not as yet investigated very deeply. And that is this desire mapping concept. I think that this stands out and is a little different than the way we approach the quarterly framework and goal setting, and in a way that really resonates with me. And I'm excited to approach with some of our clients. And let me start by saying, identifying something that I think can represent some resistance in that process for some people, which is that depending on their sort of orientation, this could become an extremely mental process.
The desire mapping?
No, it's goal setting.
Goal setting, yeah.
And it opens up the door for so much compulsive kind of, I ought to strive for this, I ought to be doing this, I should be doing this.
It's hard to differentiate what goals are really coming from within and what goals are just flying around in us because of the path we've taken and the people we've been exposed to.
Society, acculturation, we need to make so many people happy in our lives, our parents, our colleagues. So I think that alone is worth giving this a shot. The thing that I think desire mapping really brings out in that process is an opportunity to get into your body, to identify the actual feeling that you're after. So when Danielle Laporte is the creator of this work called Desire Mapping, I think what she's offering here is not just a list of things you might want to acquire or achieve, but the actual experience, the somatic experience, the somatic marker, the feeling in your body that you're after, that you want. And through this process of desire mapping, to arrive at these core desires that are true for you right now. So I gave that a shot over the weekend. And I think through that process, one thing that I think you're invited to do in the first stages or the first phase of creating this desire map is to be very loose with it, to be sloppy. And as a way to kind of get out of the shoulds and the ought tos.
Just to give ourselves space to...
Just to say whatever. It could be anything, right? And it might not be connected to what you thought was your path of striving and achievement.
And there's no obligation to do something that relates to everything on that first list. We can just cast the net wide and see what happens and then refine it later.
That's how I understood it. And that's how I tried it.
Great, yeah. And how do you do it? Are you like laying on the ground? You're laying in the grass and just being like, what do I want? Or is it writing or what's the process?
I sat at a table with a blank page and made a giant list. Actually, in my case, it was a mind map. So I did a mind map and I would just allow myself to free associate. Words like relaxed, focused, enthused, inspired, respected. I said I wanted mastery, the experience of mastery, autonomy, sovereignty, alignment, in control, ethical. So a lot of these things in Danielle Laporte's vocabulary would have something underneath them. Actually, they're not quite feelings yet. And so I think the invitation in this process is then to extend the inquiry out to just keep asking yourself why. Kind of like a child would play that game with you. Why do you want to do? Just keep going one layer deeper. Why do you want a new car? That's not a feeling yet, right? Even something like mastery It's like, well, where's that in my body? What does that mean? So I did that and I extended the inquiry out off my whole list. And then I honed it down to be the next stage. She recommends about like 4 to 6. I came up with 3 that I thought kind of were these core feeling states that were behind a lot of what was on my list. So one feeling that I'm after is ecstasy, ecstatic, safety. And then this feeling has 2 words attached to it, free and spontaneous.
Okay. So can I ask you something about that? Because I don't think I'm as familiar with the human body as you are, or as many people are. I mean, I have one. I've had one for 43 years. It works pretty well as far as I know. But when people often, even in a yoga class or just in general, they talk about specific parts of the body or feeling the feelings. Sometimes I'm like a little bit lost. I'm like, what does that mean? So when you talk about what is the feeling in the body associated with your desire for spontaneity, what is that? What is that? Is there actually like a tactile sensation that you feel right now that has to do with wanting to be spontaneous?
I think, Ankur, there will always be a chasm between the vocabulary and the actual feeling, the somatic feeling, because they're 2 different modes of awareness. For instance, if you became aware of the tip of your nose right now and you're looking for sensations, right? You're trying to collect sensations or register sensations. Could be just the temperature of the room. Could be like, you could even, and how sensitive you could be with that. That's very different than contemplating the tip of your nose as an idea, right? And we could go through your whole body, scanning your body and collecting sensations in this way. And emotions and states, mind states or states of being are very entangled with these sensations, this somatic experience of being, right? So I think that's the difference. And when I say something like spontaneous, yes, it's a word, but to me, it has qualities, right? So I think there's location is one thing to look for. People can look for location in their body, right? When they're trying to get a hold of a felt sense. And there's qualities, right? So for me, spontaneous feels very light and it feels very spacious.
So does that mean right now, if you have a desire for spontaneity, you're feeling a sort of constriction or heaviness somewhere in your body and you're wanting it to be lighter and more spacious?
I think it could be that.
But what is it for you?
Well, yeah, it's not that. I think it could be that. And I think for the listener, that could be very useful to work in these opposites. I feel this right now. I don't want to feel this, so I'm moving away from this. It could also be a taste or a flavor that you've had and you want more of. For me, in this case, also because what I'm going to get to in a moment is I've actually kind of created an experiment for me to try some of this out. And I just had that experience this morning. So in this moment, it's something that I want to expand and cultivate. But I think either one of those could be useful as an entry point for someone. If they felt like a real contraction or constriction, the desire, the yearning might be for more space. But it could also be something you have and enjoy and want more of.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, just to be really specific, because this is a bit foreign to me, could you describe the sensation like in your body before you run your experiment in the morning? And then we'll get to what that experiment is. And then after?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, that experience happens a lot here in the ribs, not to get too in the weeds of the vocabulary, but like this kind of thoracic region of my torso. Right. And when I wake up in the morning, I do feel a little contracted and constricted around that area here. To me, expansiveness, spontaneity, freedom, this free and spontaneous feeling has a lot to do with a spaciousness in this area of my body, a lightness. I think I said that already, like a feeling of lightness and spaciousness. And that I think also the experience, the physical, like concrete experience of that also relates to my breath, how I'm breathing and how I'm kind of feeling moment to moment, and also how I'm moving, right, through the world. Like what, even just, and vocally, right? There's just more freedom. Here's a word that also maybe will help you understand is play. I feel like more of a sense of play by going towards these feeling states. And that, might be different than if I just set a goal with an idea kind of mentally of I want to be more creative, or I want some more output of this thing that I, think is going to give me that. But now I'm like actually starting from the feeling state that I'm desiring. I think that's what is really at the core of this process of desire mapping, is you're not starting with the goal or the end in mind, but really core, what is the experience? What is the feeling that I want? So let me tell you about the experiment, because I think that may or may not be interesting to you or the listener. But so I'm after these 3 things that I identified, an ecstatic experience, a safe experience, and then this thing that you just helped me kind of articulate better, but free and spontaneous. And so the experiment, the goal or the process that I decided to try for the rest of the quarter is half an hour of movement in the morning focused on those experiences. So ecstatic dancing. And the way I've structured it is I want to do 15 minutes of kind of a shaking Kundalini meditation that you're familiar with. That's 15 minutes. And then 15 minutes of this free, spontaneous, and ecstatic movement dance set to music. And of course, just by doing that and kind of practicing and affirming that, I'm also experiencing safety, because I'm operating these kind of risky, free movements, right? I'm like kind of taking myself out there in the privacy of my home. I'm not doing this in a subway yet. Maybe that's next quarter. But I'm creating this sort of sanctum and safety just by doing the practice. So that's my idea anyways. And I'm going to give it a shot for these we're already 3 weeks into this quarter. And I'm going to give it a shot for these next 10 weeks. See if this little bit does get me closer to those experiences that I'm desiring, that I'm yearning for.
Awesome. And maybe we can check in about this topic around the end of the quarter.
Yeah, I think we should do that. So maybe just for a little context, you have this kind of pivot, this new direction for the podcast.
Pivoting.
We're always pivoting. We're kind of like actually just spinning.
Yeah, but it's like spiraling upward.
Spiraling
perhaps.
Up, right?
Yeah.
Always, hopefully.
So, hopefully, yeah. So this is season 4.
Yeah.
This is going to be the first episode. Alida was the first episode in season 4. This is the first debrief of season 4. And so one of the experiments in season 4 is for these debriefs to be more about Nate digesting the episode and transforming it into an experiment.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. I think this has always been part of, it's kind of like this running thread through the entire podcast. And I might get the language wrong, but it was actually something you said a lot early on to guests, which is there one thing that if our user...
Computer world.
We're in tech. If our listener were to take something seriously and actually try it and apply it in their daily life, what's that one thing that could give someone this transformative experience? And I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go on the ride and I get all the benefit. And maybe the user gets some benefit too. But I think it's good that someone's out there actually trying these things and reporting back. I love this idea. So count me in.
Perfect. Okay. So one idea I just had.
Yep.
In order to take people along with you, because I know that people love Nate, people want to come along with you.
It's true.
Would you be willing to put in the show notes a link to some sort of YouTube thing that exists about Kundalini meditation, this shaking thing, and maybe a playlist that you're listening to?
Sure. Yeah. There is just a Spotify playlist specifically for this meditation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's structured meditation. The other thing that I'll put in the show notes is at least something to this desire mapping, which I think people can really benefit from, especially if your response to this goal setting, that you find yourself encountering resistance to the mental aspect to it. I think this is a really wonderful companion. I think it's still like you're orienting towards goals that are going to be meaningful for you, but it's just a different way in. And for me, I'm all about options. I think we should have many ways in to start something and to investigate something and to follow something. So I'm really excited about that and what people might get out of it, giving that aspect a shot, starting with the body.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much.
Dude, thank you for setting this up. And I'm excited for this season. I think this is going to be exciting. Thank you all so much for listening, for spending some time with us. We really, really value your time and attention. And stick with us for the rest of the season. See how these experiments go. And give us a holler if you have any ideas. You want to see me try something? You want me to jump into an above ground pool full of lobsters? Probably not going to do it, but we'll listen to all of your requests. We'll listen to your feedback. We promise that. And maybe we'll even have you on the show. Who knows? Reach out to us. Start a conversation. We love hearing from you. We'll talk to y'all next time.
That concludes another episode of the 10,000 Heroes Show. Thanks again for listening. And I hope that this has contributed in some small way to your own personal journey of heroism. I'd like to give a shout out to Pierre for the episode artwork, DJ Plainview for the theme music, and to our producer-editor, Martine. This podcast is sponsored by Momentum Lab, our year-long coaching program providing insight, accountability, a community of excellence, and one-on-one support. I encourage anyone who's intrigued to go to whatismomentumlab.com and explore. Finally, I love communication. If this episode has impacted your life in any way, let me know. Our email is info@10kh.show, and there's other ways to contact us in the show notes. Thank you. Have a wonderful day and take care.